Do you want to work remote in a different city, but you need to work synchronously somewhere in North America in order to do so, and you don't want to go to somewhere like Thailand where you'd have to work a 2 a.m. till a 10 a.m. shift? Well, over the last couple of years, I've worked all through Central and South America, and I've been to a lot of cities during that time. And in this video, I want to go through some of my best recommendations for cities to try while being able to work synchronously from a different country. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So in this video, I want to talk about my 5 best recommended cities in order to work synchronously from South or Central America while still being on East or West Coast time. And the reason being, a lot of companies require you to attend meetings or have one-to-ones with your boss or be like on sales calls or something like that. And you need to be able to work synchronously during that time. But the challenge comes in when you're trying to go to places like Australia or Bali or Thailand or something like that. And the time zones are just like radically difficult to try and work synchronously. And as well, it's also kind of an easier way to be obviously out of the country. If your background is pitch black, but really back in New York, it's 9 a.m. There's something up, and it can be a little bit of a difficult red flag for you and your team. Now, if you are doing like contract work or asynchronous work, this isn't going to be as applicable to you, but there's a lot of people who do have to attend live meetings, whether that's as a freelancer working with clients or as a company employee from an American or Canadian company. So before we get into my number 5 list, I do want to have some honorable mentions here. Unfortunately, as a Canadian, we aren't able to work remotely in the United States without a visa. So things like Austin, Miami, or even Puerto Rico, I've had a lot of people saying they've enjoyed their time down there. If you are an American citizen, it's quite easy to go and work in those other places as long as you're paying the appropriate local taxes for those state laws. Unfortunately, I'm not super familiar with it because I just have never needed to know how that works, but keep that in mind to make sure you're not breaking any state laws when you do so. On the flip side, if you are looking for a change of scenery, the Toronto remote working policy is actually very, very friendly. I believe pretty much anywhere in Canada you can stay up to 6 months working remotely as an American citizen, and that's just completely fine. There's no rules against it. So I would say do not come up here during the winter months if you're not used to the cold. It is cold as balls generally from December until March. So if that's something you're not used to, probably stay away during the winter months and come up during the summer when it's nice and warm. On that note, yes, we do get a summer. May, June, July, August, and into September is very, very warm up here. July and August, well into the 80s, a lot of days of the week. All right, with that being said, let's get into this. And it's worth mentioning as well for myself, when I'm prioritizing a city, there's a few things that I'm always looking for. Safety, accessibility for walking. I really don't like to have a car or even a bicycle. I really just trust my own 2 feet more than anything, especially if I'm getting hammered on margaritas on a random Tuesday afternoon. I want to be able to walk home without having to go too far away. Also looking for nightlife, health and fitness, and the food as well. Those are all really important things for me, and this channel talks about kind of combining all of those things into a holistic approach of traveling, staying in shape, eating good food, not shying away from alcohol and nightlife, but really approaching a balanced lifestyle. Okay, now with all that jibber jabber out of the way, let's get into my list here. And I've been through most of South America and Central America over the last few years, and throughout my life really I've visited a lot of these countries, which is was just in the Dominican Republic, which is kind of, the Caribbean, Latin America, let's say. So I know it pretty well. So number 5 for me is going to be Mexico City, La Ciudad de Mexico. It is just a absolute beast of a city that has pretty much everything you could ever want, whether your thing is nightlife or cuisine or fitness or museums or really you name it. Mexico City is probably going to cover it. I think recently over the last couple of years with the Mexican peso being so strong against the US dollar, it has gotten quite a lot more expensive in Mexico City in some of the nicer areas like Condesa, Polanco, or Roma Norte, but some of the other neighborhoods that are starting to become more and more popular, you can get a more affordable place there and then go visit some of those neighborhoods at night or on the weekends, so it should be a little bit more accessible for you. I just think Mexico City kind of ticks all the boxes you would ever want as someone who just, if you've never been there before, it is a one-of-a-kind city in the Western world. It is beautiful and has greenery, but it also has architecture and history, and it just really covers all of the bases. There is, of course, like the concern with a little bit of safety at night and a little bit of corruption in the local police. I never experienced any of that. I've just heard from other people who've been there that that's a problem. So just keep in mind when you're selecting a neighborhood, you want to pick something that's safe, depending on your level of Spanish. As well as you go outside of the tourist areas, it's going to be a lot more difficult to communicate. Number 4, one of the classic digital nomad cities, Medellin, Colombia. Very, very popular over the last like 10 years, has become increasingly popular. I would say this is kind of getting close to the end of Medellin's run of being a good DN destination. I think the last few years and the last 2 times I've been there, I went to a year apart between visits, and it's like noticeably more saturated with Americans, and it's getting to the point where it's almost too much, I would say. I do think it has maybe 1 or 2 more years but before I would just not go back to it, just for the simple fact like El Poblado and Laureles, those neighborhoods are pretty popular with digital nomads and gringos, and it kind of just takes away from the beauty of Colombia, and the people are a little bit more hostile to tourists because they're a lot of times just disrespectful. They don't speak Spanish. They leave the city in a worse place than they found it. They're driving up rental prices. So there is a little bit of animosity from the locals to tourism at this point. So just be wary of that. And as well, again, outside of these major areas, they're really not going to speak much English. So I would definitely brush up on your Spanish before you go to Medellin. And of course, the safety is always a really big concern in that city. If you're going out at night, always take Ubers. Be careful what you're wearing. No dar papaya. Like, don't give people reason to challenge you. So yeah, there's Medellin. Number 3 for me in this list is actually gonna be Lima, Peru. I had a blast in Lima. I think it is one of the best food cities, again, in the world. I think number 1 Restaurant Central is in Lima. Believe it's still number 1. This is a incredible seafood place, from the ceviche to any dish that has seafood in it. I think you're going to be blown away with how fresh and the quality of it. It's also very similar to Colombia in the sense of the biodiversity and the vegetation that grows there is very fresh, very good on fruits and vegetables, and you can have an easy time to find a lot of really healthy food and just enjoy it. I think the Peruvian people were lovely. The airport was a little bit far out of town, so keep that in mind. Maybe you want to book a private driver from a service or from your hostel, depending on who you're going with, just to be a little bit of peace of mind to get to your final destination. And with that being said, a lot of people spoke pretty good English in a lot of the tourist areas. I stayed in Miraflores, which is like the most popular, I would say, neighborhood for people who are visiting, but it was very safe, very clean, lots of English, amazing food, and the price range was pretty good for what it was. I also think Peru is pretty centralized to where you want to go if you want to do like a weekend trip to like Chile or Argentina, or like even fly a little bit further to Brazil or Mexico or Colombia. Like, there's so many options you can go because it's kind of centralized at the top of South America. So I think overall it's just a really, really good city to put in the number 3 spot. Number 2 is going to be a new one on this list. It's Florianopolis, Brazil, and it's in the very kind of southern tip, close to Sao Paulo in Brazil. So it's nicknamed the Magic Island, or just the locals call it Floripa, and it's a really beautiful destination on the beach, on that southern tip, like I said, close to Argentina and Uruguay, kind of at the bottom of Brazil. And it's kind of a drastic shift in the vibe and I think the local presence compared to Rio. Rio is known to be very, very, beautiful and have incredible beaches, but it's also, like, I believe, considered one of the least safe LATAM cities. Just there's been a lot of horror stories of people going to Airbnbs, and then there's just like people waiting for them off of the booked Airbnb to like rob them and things like that. So it just has a little bit of that with it, versus Floripa has a ton of like tech companies and digital nomads, and it's very clean, very like rich comparatively. So I just really think it has kind of everything that you would want. The challenge with getting to Floripa is it's just really, really far away. Same with number 1, as we're gonna get to next. So if you are someone like living in the northern states or in Canada, it's just a long way to get down there. I believe, like, when I was in Bariloche in Patagonia last year, I was something like 14,000 kilometers from home, which is like kind of the complete opposite end of the globe. So it's just challenging to get down there, but it is increasing the price. But overall, I think Floripa is just a beautiful city. Brazilians are very friendly. It can also be a little bit challenging, as I speak decent Spanish, but I don't really speak much Portuguese. So there can be a bit of a communication barrier at that point, but I found the English to be pretty good as well. Now, number one for me has my heart forever. It's my favorite city in the world. I think it's one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to. It is the Paris of South America. It is Buenos Aires, Argentina. I think it is just really the perfect combination of city life plus nature plus access to beaches plus access to wine regions in Mendoza, to like hiking and potentially like snowboarding or skiing in the winter in Patagonia. Then you can go to Ushuaia and take a trip to Antarctica, or you can go a little bit north into like Iguazu and see that waterfall between Argentina and Brazil. And it just has such a unique experience and culture where where the food is incredible and your access to nature is just kind of all around you. Like the trees are just like naturally a part of the city throughout the entire place. And anytime you see like a massive park, that is usually correlates with a condo building across the street, because the way I understand it and the way that the local had told me about it was that they have this like policy when they were building that if you're going to build a building, there has to be an equal green space appropriate with it. So anytime there's like a large condo, there has to be like a park nearby in order to offset that. So because of it, you kind of just have this amazing combination of greenery and then tied together with the beautiful architecture of essentially a European city. I think just the food, the asado, the wine, the culture, the nightlife, the affordability of it, and the people themselves are it's just an incredible place to be, and I can't wait to get back there in January of this year, and it's just my favorite place in the world, I think. So number one, Buenos Aires. So hopefully this video was useful. I know there's a lot that went into it, but that's my kind of opinion on the best synchronous working cities that you can do from, you know, a US or Canadian based company. Even if you're doing freelance or contract work and you have to work synchronous meetings. I've tried to work from Portugal and Ireland and Croatia, and it's just a little bit difficult as you have to kind of offset your day to compensate for that, and you're doing calls potentially like 11, 12 at night. And then I can't even imagine trying to do something like Vietnam or Cambodia where you're, you know, waking up at 2 a.m. to work until 10 a.m. I just don't think that's feasible. So that is going to be the video. Hopefully this was useful, my opinion on the best synchronous working cities. If it was, feel free to leave a like or comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. But as always, my name's Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.